This is the City of Evanston Plan Commission. I am Jim Ford. We have a quorum. I will call the meeting to order. You have the agenda in front of you. Are there changes or additions to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda will stand. You have the minutes of the meeting of June 10th, 2015. Are there additions or corrections to those? On page 2, in the last line of the third paragraph, I think we don't mean impeding, I think we mean impinging. And on the last page, it reports that a roll call vote was taken, but the roll call isn't reported, and I think we ought to report it. Those are the only changes I have. Anything else? Motion to approve with the changes. Lewis, second.
Second.
Goddard, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Minutes are approved. The next item of business, case number 15 PLND 0046, a request for a zoning ordinance map amendment for the properties commonly known as 1402 and 1408 Brown Avenue. The applicant is Daniel Hofstetter, and he is here. We are in public hearing here, so let me go through the procedures briefly.
Would you like me to stand before the podium?
Come on up when we're ready.
Okay.
It'll be a few minutes.
Oh, all right.
We will begin. This is a matter on which we are making a recommendation to the City Council. The Council will be the final determiner on this matter. Our recommendation may be to approve with conditions, or to disapprove. If we reach no conclusion, the matter will go to the Council without recommendation. We will begin with a brief summary of the proposal by staff, the proposal and the standards that it has to meet. We will then invite the petitioner to present testimony and witnesses, if he has any, in support of the project. At the conclusion of the petitioner's presentation, commissioners and members of the public may address questions to the petitioner. At the conclusion of that question period, if there are members of the public who wish to make statements, we will accept that testimony at that time. Commissioners and the petitioner may address questions to any members of the public who testify. The petitioner will then be invited to make any brief closing statement that he wishes. Staff may make a brief closing statement. At that point, we will close the hearing, the public record, and the commission will proceed to deliberate. Now, let me ask, ma'am, do you wish to speak tonight? Do you wish to testify?
No, I just have a few questions.
Okay, that's fine.
I have no speech, just a few questions.
Just a few questions.
If she's going to speak, she needs
All right,
But thank you.
well, you're welcome. I would still like to swear both of you. If you'll raise your right hands. You promise to tell the truth in these proceedings? I do?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. All right. Demir?
Thank you, Chairman Ford. So the petition in front of you tonight is for rezoning of the property at 1402, 1408 Brown Avenue from R2 to R4. Here's an area zoning map. The property is indicated in black at the northwest corner of Brown Avenue and Greenwood Street. I think in the memo, at least in one occasion, it was incorrectly referenced at the northeast corner. In fact, the property is at the northwest corner. The property is currently zoned R2 single-family residential, and as I mentioned, the applicant is requesting rezoning of the property into R4 general residential. As the map indicates, the properties to the north and to the west are zoned R2 single-family residential. The properties directly to the north, immediately adjacent to the north, is a two-family, a duplex, and the property to the west is actually a single-family home. Now, the properties to the south are Zone I2 General Industrial, and currently there's a self-storage facility being proposed, and they are about to open up if they have not yet. To the east, the area is Zone R4 General Residential, and it's also part of the West Evanston Overlay District. Currently, that's all commercial. A couple general contractor offices and outdoor storage areas. But the West Evanston Overlay District contemplates development of that property into townhomes. Excuse me. This is a map that was submitted by the applicant. Staff requested that this map be submitted indicating the current residential uses in the area north and west of the subject property. The map indicates basically that there's a mix of uses, single-family, duplexes, and also several townhomes that include multiple units. This is the survey of the property. The property size, both lots, it's 15,367 square feet. Individually, there's 7,683 square feet, so approximately 30 or 56 by 136 feet long. The property, the north lot, the 1408 Brown Avenue, is improved with a residential structure that includes 3 units and then a 2-car detached garage in the back. The property, the vacant lot to the south, 1402 Brown, is just vacant. There's nothing on the lot. So for comparison purposes, the minimum lot size in the R2 district is 5,000 square feet. So if there were a single family home on either lot, it would be compliant. In this case, there's a 3-unit multifamily, and that's not compliant. It's a non-conforming use. It's not allowed in the R2 district. In the R4 district, what the applicant is proposing, the minimum lot size is 25,000 or 2,500 square feet per unit for duplexes, townhomes, and multifamily residential uses, and all those uses are allowed in the R4 general district. And that's really the main difference between the R2 and R4 residential districts in terms of uses. Most uses are generally the same. They're allowed both as permitted and special. The main difference is the reason why the applicant is requesting this, and that's that the R4 general residential allows for these duplexes and multifamily developments, whereas R2 only allows single-family homes. And for the sake of comparison, I wanted to include something in the PowerPoint that was not in the packet, and that's just the bulk restrictions for the R2 and R4 district. This really indicates that there's almost exactly the same setback requirements. The front yard in both districts would be 27 feet. On a corner side, there will be 15 feet on both sides. Parking is not allowed within the front yards along either street. The side yards are 5 feet. The rear yard is the only place where there's a difference between R2 and R4. In the R2, currently, the requirement is 30 feet. What's proposed in the R4, it would be 25 feet. Height is the same, 35 feet maximum, and then building lot coverage and impervious surface coverage, also the same restrictions. So when we look at the standards for rezoning of something like this, in regards to the first standard, if it's consistent with the comprehensive general plan, indeed we felt that this proposal is consistent with the plan on multiple occasions. The proposal would not only enable development of a variety of different residential units on this property, which the comp plan calls for, but it also would enable a higher density use, slightly higher density use in the corner lot that would buffer the single family, primarily single family residential use to the north and to the west of this site, and that would protect the character of the existing neighborhoods. So we felt that standard number 1 was satisfied. In regards to the standard number 2, we feel that that's also met. We feel that this proposal is compatible with the character of the existing land uses in the area. As the applicant has demonstrated, a lot of the residential uses that are north and to the west are of multifamily nature. There's an R4 zone district to the west, and it is appropriate to have a little bit of a higher density as a transitional use that can buffer the lower density residential uses from the industrial and commercial uses to the south. In regards to standard number 3, this proposal will not have an adverse effect on the values of adjacent properties. If anything, it could increase the value of the properties by enabling new construction on the vacant lot that can provide some buffer to the residences. And then currently, there's no proposal whatsoever on the site, so public facilities and services will adequately serve the property. If in the future there is a proposal, obviously the staff would review that and make sure that any public facilities are available, and if not, the applicant or developer at that time would have to provide additionals. So with that, staff believes that all standards have been satisfied, and we do recommend Plan Commission make a positive recommendation to the City Council.
Thank you. Mr. Hofstadter.
I'd first like to start out by thanking Mr. Ford and the rest of the members of the Plan Commission for hearing this evening. My name is Dan Hofstadter. I'm the applicant today, and I would simply reconfirm what was already presented by Demir in his summation of the application for a map amendment from R2 to R4. Essentially, there's three basic reasons why the applicant or the owner wishes to seek the map amendment. The first being the establishment of a residential buffer to the R4 designation, which would allow for the construction of multifamily residential units, buffering the industrial section to the south from the neighborhood to the north, as well as it would be consistent with the R4 designation and the townhome designation of the property immediately to the east, which is occupied currently by a construction company. So it would serve as a buffer between those commercial industrial areas and the rest of the neighborhood that is to the north and west. Secondly, it would offer alternative residential options for the rest of the community, and that it would allow for the development or construction of townhomes and other matters and other forms of housing that would be more affordable than the construction of a single-family dwelling. And thirdly, the lot at 1402 Brown is currently vacant and has been that way for since the 1940s, I'm told. And then the three flat to the north of that at 1408 was originally a home that was moved to that site from another site. So it's, in speaking with the owner who's done extensive research on the history of that home, he's indicated it was moved there. It's always been used in that fashion. And by changing the classification from R2 to R4 would bring that structure at 1408 into compliance, as Demir has indicated, with the R4 designation as a three-flat building. And also, it would allow for the development of the vacant lot. The owner has consulted with various third parties about developing that lot, and there's no interest in developing it as a single-family residence, because to do so would require the expenditure of upwards of around $500,000, and housing in that area would not support a potential buyer for a home of that caliber. So thus, they simply walk away from any further negotiations. However, saying that if the zoning were changed to R4, that would be something that they would be interested in considering developing into a multifamily use. So if the classification from R2 to R4 were not granted, unfortunately that lot would just probably remain vacant for many years to come, with no development for future multifamily housing that could be, that would serve a portion of the community that could afford such housing and yet live in that area of the neighborhood. And I really have nothing further than that.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Hofstadter? We'll ask for questions first from the commission. All right, then. Questions from the public for Mr. Hofstadter?
Yeah, I just has the,
Come to the mic, ma'am, if you will. And give us your name and address for the record.
Lucretia Booker, 2022 Lake. Just had a question. Has the lot been sold yet?
No, it has not.
Okay, and now, what is the is it going to be group home or low-income housing or townhouses or duplexes or two flats or what is it?
We don't know that at this time. We're simply seeking a change of the zoning to make it attractive to a developer who have
Okay.
to submit plans to the city in order to.
Would it have to be rezoned for group housing or low-income housing or? I mean, if it is, of course, it goes through as R4, then if it's going to be like low-income housing or group homes, would that have to be rezoned for that, or?
Demir, you want to answer that?
Yeah, this is probably a question for staff. Well, there's no separate use classification for low-income housing. That's simply residential use. So the quality of housing that is developed there, that is up to the developer to determine. In regards to a group home, those uses are allowed in all residential districts. We have various types of group homes that generally are referred to as group homes. We have residential care homes. We have sheltered shelters and et cetera. Those are allowed both in R2 and R4.
Okay.
Are they allowed by right or special use?
Well, for example, in the R4, what's being proposed, a residential care home for up to, I believe, 8 residents would be allowed by right. A shelter for abused persons is also allowed by right.
So that would not require any further rezoning.
Okay.
Correct. No.
Thanks. Well, the house at 1408, I mean, we have lived on Lake a long time, and that house was really an eyesore before the present owner took it. And he and his wife spent a lot of time to get it like the way it should be, the way it is now. They took a lot of time to get contractors to do the work right, and it's a beautiful home at 1408. And I don't know anything else about their plans, but certainly hope they will stay. But all I'm saying is, we appreciate all the time and work and effort and expense they went to get it just a beautiful home. And I would just hope that whoever buys 1402 would blend in with the rest of the neighborhood and the care the neighbors have taken. Oh, I said I wasn't going to make a speech, but anyway, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Booker. Other questions for the petitioner? Are there now members of the public who wish to make statements? Then I think we can close the public record and proceed with deliberation.
Thank you.
Commissioners, what are your thoughts? Any further questions first? Commissioner Isaac.
Yeah, I have I think there are a few problems with the request. I would first point out that the city council saw fit to zone the entire area as R2, presumably with the knowledge that there were properties that were being used as 2-unit buildings at the time and townhomes as well. And I would point out that the property already has, well, at least 1408 already has 3 units on it, as opposed to, I believe, most of the other multifamilies are, 2-unit buildings. I have a concern about allowing what I'd call a blank check to any future owner of the property. Presumably, a developer could come in and build a 6-unit building on the entire site by raising the existing house at 1408, and thus destroy the buffer that was intended by the applicant's requests. I would I would point out that I believe if the owner were to deconvert one of the units in 1408 and would request an R3 zoning for both 1408 and 1402, then the lot at 1402 could have a 2-unit building on it, and both properties would be legal and conforming. But again, my overall concern about the application is that it seems to me that this conversation should be more about the area as a whole, as opposed to addressing lots one at a time, because we could agree to the R4 zoning for this property now and end up with a 6-unit building on the 2 lots next year, and the property next door will ask for an upzoning for the same, for the same reasons that we're considering today. Those are my points about.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yeah, I don't think my light's going on, but does it show up over there?
I don't see a light.
Yeah, it doesn't go either way. Okay. So,
Oh.
all right. So I guess addressing one point is of Commissioner Isaacs is that if it does reach the zoning or the density of 3 units or 6 units on the 2 properties, that is consistent with what is possible on the adjacent property and is just an extension of it. It's not what's potentially out of place for the entire area or the intent of the entire area. It will be consistent with it. So instead of bringing it down in density to closer to an R2, by making it R3, making it R4 just helps to bring that whole corridor that's already intended from the overlay district to be denser and to have that kind of housing, which I agree in Evanston is of shortage, which is town housing, which is moderately priced housing that we haven't provided for all that much. I also agree, though, that this is a little ad hoc piecemeal for me, and one of the arguments was to create a buffer between the residential district and the industrial district, which makes me think, well, why aren't we just making that whole strip, the more medium, higher density system, and going more intensively into it. But short of that, since there's no need and it is already viable housing stock in that area, I would say to answer my question is you just leave it well enough alone until there is a need to do that. So I would think that it is consistent and it's better to get it developed with what is potentially the same density that's going to be there, get it on the tax rolls, and provide a benefit for people who are going to be, seeking to have housing there. So, in Evanston. So.
I agree with everything Colby said, and just one thing for your R3. I am kind of opposed to spot zoning, which is what this would be. I think R4 would solve the problems. It would put, as Colby mentioned, a vacant lot on the tax rolls and provide affordable housing for more residents in that community, possibly.
Commissioner Dubin.
I think that a corner lot is an appropriate place for multifamily housing. It's kind of brackets the block, and it does serve as a buffer across Greenwood Street to a minimal extent, but still probably as much as a buffer as you would like along that street.
I guess one of the issues that I have is I think it's a little, say, making this blank check idea or just doing spot zoning for the benefit of someone's, personal benefit is, personal income. I mean, is a little bit troublesome to me, and I'd like to kind of ask, what's the history of that? Do you know, Demir? Is there? I mean, because this really, we're saying we're going to rezone this so it can be sold or turned a profit on or something like that. So the personal benefit is there, other than the overall community benefit. But I'm trying to get. It's a little bothersome to me that
Yeah,
we'd be zoning like that.
I think that's a valid point. That particular item is addressed in standards of approval of individual proposals. So if there was a proposal for, 8-unit building rather than a 6-unit building, then one of the standards is, why? Are you reaching certain public benefit? As a matter of fact, we have another proposal elsewhere where they're exceeding the number of units and they have to demonstrate there's a public benefit and they're not exceeding the number of units for the financial gain. That's one of the standards to get a variance. To go back to the idea of allowing, when we allow rezonings, and the idea of, that's just blank check for somebody. Well, the idea is that the property owner has owned this lot that's currently vacant and underutilized for a very long time. So the existing zoning is not suited for this property, does not allow for redevelopment in a good manner. So we feel that rezoning into something that would adequately serve as sort of a transition, as a buffer, extension of an adjacent R4 lot. I do agree that rezoning into R3 would be spot zoning.
So you're basically saying you're bringing it up to what the market forces are dictating it should be.
It seems to be that
Not for his own
rezone.
personal profit, but.
Correct. No, that's currently there's no proposal. So we could be a single family home. Maybe somebody will want to build a really tiny home. But ultimately, the rezoning request and staff's recommendation is in response to the market conditions, the changing environment, the fact that our comp plan calls for a variety of different dwelling units and dwelling types, and this seems to be a logical spot for something like that. And the idea to rezone the entire strip, yes, in perfect world, we would have a strip of higher density residential as sort of a buffer from industrial uses. But rezoning multiple properties at one time requires approval from all those property owners, and that's why rezoning does not happen unless property owners are in consent of that. So it usually happens on a per-need basis.
So am I correct that usually, it is unusual for us to grant a rezoning when there is not a live project? Which I don't particularly like the phrase blank check, but it sounds to me as though that's the concern that's being raised, that we are granting rezoning without knowing for sure what's going to happen on the property. And I think that is an unusual decision, is it not?
I would agree that more often than not, rezoning petitions are accompanied with a proposal of some sort. Okay. However, this seems to be a unique property that there was absolutely no viable interest under current zoning or any other potential rezoning. And when one is considering rezoning along with a proposal for the upzoning, then it's even more under a microscope. Are we rezoning just for that financial benefit to allow for that particular development? In this case, it's actually more beneficial to look at a property from a simple land use evaluation of the area. Well, does this property, is it appropriate for R4 or is it appropriate for R2? Regardless of what goes in there, let's look at the uses, let's look at the bulk restrictions, the trend of development in the area, does that make sense? And if that leads to a development of townhomes, a single family or a multifamily, 2 3-unit buildings or 1 6-unit building, a row of townhomes along Greenwood and along Brown Avenue to sort of square it off. That remains to be seen, but based on the current trend of development, it seems that this type of rezoning without the proposal is appropriate and it's evident for this property.
Demir, what's the purpose of including 1408 as part of the rezoning request, considering it's already a legally non-conforming parcel?
That's probably a question better for the developer, for the applicant, but in this case, it would make the existing property conforming. Right now, it's a non-conforming lot with a 3-unit building where only a single family is allowed. If it were to be rezoned, then 3 units would be allowed on the north lot, 3 units on the south lot. And
But,
so-
I mean, if 1402 were redeveloped as a, 3 townhomes, 3-unit building, that property would serve as the buffer, and 1408 would begin the residential uses that were contemplated by making the entire area R2. So I don't understand. I don't like the fact that both parcels are being included as in the application.
I know we closed the record, but I'm going to treat that as a question to the petitioner, which is permissible. Mr. Hofstadter, do you want to respond to that question? Why are you including both parcels?
With respect to the property at 1408, since it is currently non-conforming, this R4 designation would, as indicated earlier, would make that property compliant with an R4 classification, and that's the primary reason for doing so.
But as we've said, it's already legal. It's a legal non.
It's legally non-conforming, yes?
Right.
There's properties all over that are legal non-conforming properties that we're not trying to fix.
And I think when one looks at the map, as opposed to just having a small sliver designated as R4, by having that corner squarely within the R4 classification, would make it would create a greater incentive if the owner should so choose to consider developing that corner as something that would be fully compliant with R4.
But the proposed rezoning would also allow the redevelopment of the entire site,
That's correct.
which I gather is your concern, one of your concerns.
Correct.
Okay.
So it appears that. It appears that we've got kind of, is it 3 possibilities? One is to approve the recommendation as it is, or to deny it. I thought the third was possibly extend it to make it more, not just a sliver, but really make it a purposeful R4 zoning. And the second one is to divide the property and only approve the vacant land that is the unsellable, undevelopable land, recommend that it be severed and only the 1402 be rezoned. Is that the case? Or
That's-
recommendation?
That's a logical possibility, yes, isn't it?
Plan Commission can make a recommendation.
Planning Commission can do what it wants to do.
They can recommend for the recommendation to just rezone both or rezone just one of them or none.
Oh, they are separate tax parcels.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And Demir, just one question. Since multiple units are not allowed in an R2, I'm presuming that separating the 2 lots from a zoning perspective would not increase the nonconformities already on the R2 lot, considering that in R2 there's not a number of square feet per required per unit, and so by separating 1402 from 1408, the applicant or the property owner would not have a issue with increasing the nonconformity. Would that be a fair assessment?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase?
I think the other way of saying this is the 2 properties are already separate taxing bodies with separate regulations for each one. They are just aggregating them well, owners, they're just the same ownership that could be separated by a building between them and still be the same ownership. And
Yeah,
you know,
those are two existing lots that can be developed separately or together,
Right, yeah.
regardless of, what they're rezoned or not. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is the required setbacks. If there was to be a proposal for redevelopment on the corner lot only, and as I think I've indicated, the setbacks off of the front yard setback is 27 feet, and then the street side setback is 15 feet, and then 5 feet from the north property line. So a redevelopment of a single lot would probably need some sort of variances to have a decent development there, probably. It may not be impossible, but it's something to think about, which is one of the things that we felt that combining both lots to make a compliant, unconforming R3, and not just the single lot across the street, we felt that it was appropriate to have both of them.
Well, now, let us assume that we approved the rezoning, and let us assume that the property owner decided to tear down the existing structure and build 2 new 3-flats, just for sake of argument. Both of those would have setback problems, would they not? They're separate. This is not one parcel. I mean, could you build a single 6-flat building that straddled the property line?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was my understanding that the person who acquired both lots could put together a single project for both.
It doesn't have to be made a subdivision or a aggregated property?
That would be the option of the applicant. They can be considered one zoning lot, if it's under common ownership, it's just like one property.
Let me ask a question, I guess. You have testified that this lot has proved to be unsaleable, zoned as it is. That's your judgment.
Correct.
Do I assume that the property owner's effort has been to sell the vacant lot and not both lots?
Thus far, that has been the effort.
Okay. So up until
And-
now, there has been no intent to sell the existing residential building and, yeah,
No,
okay, got it.
No. And the pushback from third parties are, we're not interested because all we can build is a single-family residence, and the economics of the transaction don't
Got it.
warrant that type of move.
Again, I don't see what we gain by making one R2 and one R4. Again, we're doing kind of spot zoning here. I mean, he's asking for 2 lots to have one zoning, and I think that's a fair question that should be asked.
Okay. Are we exhausted?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to cut this off if there are still points people need to make or questions people need to ask.
I guess in support of both lots being R4, I think that would diminish the likelihood of a very small, isolated form of development as to the 1402 address, whereas the owner, if they had the R4, which is consistent with its current use anyways, would allow the owner to consider a more comprehensive beneficial plan that would be something other than a very minuscule, isolated type of development.
Okay, commissioners, what's your pleasure? Does somebody want to move? Commissioner Lewis, what do you want to move?
I move that we recommend approval of the rezoning of the properties at 1402 and 1408 and 1408 to R4 district per the recommendation of staff.
As requested. Okay, Commissioner Lewis, second.
Second?
Commissioner Goddard. Is there discussion on the motion? Since this is a recommendation to the council, we will do this by roll call.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Goddard,
Aye.
Commissioner Dubin,
Aye.
Commissioner Isaac,
Nay.
Chairman Ford.
Aye. 4 ayes, 1 nay. The motion is approved. The rezoning will be recommended to City Council as requested.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Let me just say, it is a good-looking house.
My neighbor, I'm not going anywhere, guys, I just want to let you know that. I'll be there.
He's actually getting married on August 15th.
Oh, cool.
Congratulations.
Well, way to go. Terrific.
I came, I got some good news.
Yeah, really.
I wouldn't want to miss that. Definitely worth coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Other business. Public comment. Does the public have anything she wishes to say to us tonight? Okay. Demir, anything else to come before us?
No, just wanted to point out that as of right now, we don't have an application or a case for the August 12th meeting, so there's a good chance that meeting may be canceled. Deadline sometime next week, so we'll know definitely by the end of next week. But as of right now, I don't anticipate anything coming.
Okay, good. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
No, we have the rules.
Oh, we've got the rules. Good grief. How silly of me. Yeah, it's my baby. Thank you. I sailed right past it. Okay. You have been sent the revised rules of procedure as they were adopted by the commission with proposed amendments to Article 13 dealing with public hearing procedure. You'll recall that our purpose in doing that amendment was to bring the procedures back into line with what we have been doing, the Rules Committee draft having changed the order of hearing, and so essentially we're putting the order back. Those changes in Article 13 are the only ones you have in front of you, so the action, if you choose to take it, will be to amend, simply to accept those amendments to Article 13. Are there questions?
I have one question on Section O, allowing people to make anonymous statements. Why are we allowing people to do that?
Brought up and commented by legal staff, wasn't it?
Was it?
They lose rights, though, to their status of.
Yeah, if they want to take advantage of living within 1,000 feet or whatever it is of the site, particularly in order to request a continuance, then they have to identify themselves. But otherwise, I guess there is no legal bar to someone testifying anonymously.
So we have to allow them? Is that what you're telling me?
I think
I
that's.
believe that was the judgment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
M on page
14?
54, yeah. The wording in the second paragraph, the commission's decision shall be made by roll call vote. The decision shall be in writing. I think that just needs a tweak so that it's, unless I'm being real nitpicky, which is first it says roll call, then it says in writing without kind of indicating that the roll call's first and then we write it down.
Shall we, if after the word be, we inserted reported,
Yeah, reported or.
would that do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have one more question. On O, last line, testify from podium. Technically, isn't that a lectern and we're on the podium? Seriously, I'm not trying to.
Very good one.
I guess you're right.
I don't know.
Wouldn't want people dancing up here.
I don't know if we're on the podium, but I think you're right. That is the lectern. Okay. with unanimous consent, we'll change that to lectern. How do you spell lectern, with two E's or an E and a U?
No, 2 E's.
Two E's, thank you.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I think I applaud your efforts on this, because when I joined the committee, it was well underway, and I was just a little bit, and I think it is a vast improvement to the way things were worded before. It had really no correlation to what was happening here in our proceedings, and I think it is a vast improvement, and I want to thank you for your efforts. So.
Thank you.
Second.
Anything else? All right, then a motion to approve will be in order.
I so move.
Dubin, seconded. Lewis, discussion? Uh-oh.
It's part of your baby anyway.
Does the public have something she wishes to say?
Well, the question that Commissioner Goddard asked about anonymous,
Yes.
and you said they always did anonymous before? My recollection, I hate to say, I hate to insert this, I have never heard that anybody could do anything before the Plan Commission anonymous.
I have certainly never heard that anyone could do anything anonymously. The fact that this has been through vetting by practically every lawyer except Peter and leads me to believe that, I mean, this was the Corporation Council's language, is all I can tell you.
I would not.
You would if you could.
No, it's just so totally different than any of the rules of the previous Plan Commissions, I mean, you had to jump through hoops to be able to speak, and you had to, one person couldn't speak for somebody who wasn't there, who would be anonymous. I mean,
Oh, those rules are all still in there, and I think the expectation, certainly my expectation, is that people will identify themselves, and I will ask them to. But if they decline to identify themselves, we can't bar them from speaking. I think that's what the rules mean. You could get up and not tell us who you are, and we'd still have to let you
and
speak.
this will be the only place in the whole world that could happen. Go ahead.
No, that's absolutely not the case.
Where else
I
can you
think
be
everywhere you can be anonymous. I mean, this is free speech. This is absolutely free speech. You don't have to be a citizen of Evanston. You shouldn't be a citizen. Shouldn't have to be. You can just speak about what is right and what you believe. But you get 2 minutes to do it in. That's the good part.
Right, yes.
We can let them, they stand the floor for 2 minutes.
It's a new world, go ahead. But I'll remember that.
Except we all know
Yeah, but we'll know who you are.
And where
All
you
right.
live.
No, I'll just tell everybody, they don't have to tell you who they are. If somebody asks me what the new rules are, I said,
If legal is telling us we have to do this,
We're doing it.
Yeah. So it could
Whether we
be,
like it or not, we
that
have
someone could hire people to come in and to stall a
Sure.
project,
Yeah.
by doing it, yeah.
I think
yeah.
that would be a project that was worth
Right.
doing, that would be
Yeah.
worth hearing.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. We could have a few sessions of that and.
Okay. Anything else? Then on the motion, we do this by voice vote. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion is passed. The rules are amended. Thank you. Now, there being nothing else to come before us, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Goddard, second. Isaac, seconds. He hasn't said anything. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We stand adjourned.